I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's Regional Council meeting on September the 25th, 2024. I will now call on Will Short, Regional Clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Present.
Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Solonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Williams.
Present.
Councillor Wolf.
Present.
And we have regrets from Councillor Verbanovic. Thank you, Chair.
I would now like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg, and Chinotan peoples. In doing this, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we are engaging collectively today, and also on my own individual relationship to this land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen. And I am continually grateful to the community that continues to share their stories and concerns with me. As well as the chair of the region, I know I carry a large responsibility to ensure that it is not just myself as an individual listening and acting, but that as a government, we are listening and creating action in the community. I am offering this acknowledgement as one of the many actions I am personally and the region largely is taking to a journey to reconciliation. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. I would now entertain a motion to reconvene an open session. Moved by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your icons on eScribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. I will now ask, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Just declaring conflict of interest with respect to a matter that was discussed and closed today, and it was with regards to strengths, weaknesses, strategies report. I forget the name of the report, but our firm has claims that involve area municipalities in the region, so I declared a conflict with respect to that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll fulfill the requisite paperwork in due time. Thank you very much. Any other declarations? Seeing none, there are no presentations. Delegations, we now will proceed to those listed on the agenda, and I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. For those who are joining us in person, excuse me, please proceed to the podium when you are called upon to speak. For those who are joining us electronically, please leave your video, camera turned off, and your microphone audio muted until you are called on to speak. Delegations who are registered before the deadline will have 5 minutes to speak. Those who registered after the deadline will have 3 minutes to speak. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations; derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others; turning your camera on at inappropriate times; and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations: please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and the ideas shared with us from our community members. And as a quick reminder to members of the audience, you're asked to maintain order. And this means you may not address the committee without the permission of the chair, interrupt anyone, disrupt the meeting with unreasonable noise or vocal expressions such as applause, booing, or cheering, displaying signs or posters. So the first delegation is David Marsh, Chair of the Board of Directors, Volunteer Waterloo Region. David, are you here by yourself, or did Jane Henning come with you?
Jane is not with me this evening.
So thank you very much. You have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening. As was mentioned, my name is David Marsh. I'm the chair of the board of Volunteer Waterloo Region. Jane Henning, our executive director, who's responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization, had other matters that precluded her being here, but she sends her regards. Volunteer Waterloo Region, or the Volunteer Action Centre, as we used to be known, has been involved in encouraging volunteerism within Waterloo Region for the past 40 years. The impact of volunteers in this region cannot possibly be overstated. The Conference Board of Canada relatively recently issued a report putting the value of the direct contribution of volunteers at 2.7% of gross domestic product. For Waterloo Region, that's $1.2 billion every year that volunteers are contributing. The impacts are significant, but it's not without its challenges. There are probably three main challenges as we see it to volunteerism currently. Volunteerism is declining both in real and absolute and relative terms. Volunteerism is changing, and volunteerism is increasingly requiring a significant amount of coordination. It's declining. This was happening prior to the pandemic, and it's continued afterwards. Many areas of our community have seen a bounce back after the lockdowns of the pandemic. That's not translated to volunteering in the same way. So we're taking a number of steps to try to address this. We are reaching out to community members who may want to volunteer, making them aware of the opportunities. We've made significant investments into our systems and processes to connect not-for-profits who are seeking volunteers with community members who might want to volunteer. And perhaps most importantly, we are also doing everything we can to lower barriers of entry for community members who do want to participate in volunteering. It's also changing, though, significantly. It's very rare now for someone to volunteer for the same organization for many, many years in the same role. Increasingly, people who volunteer want more flexibility. They want a shorter time frame of commitment. They want very clear and measurable goals and objectives. And probably most importantly, they want opportunities that reflect their own uniqueness. Software engineer at Google is looking for opportunities where she can contribute her software engineering skills to her community. And so part of what we're doing is making volunteers aware that those opportunities do exist, and also working with and coaching not-for-profits to help them mold and shape the volunteer opportunities that will meet those needs and those desires to the benefit of both the organization, the volunteer, and the clients. Finally, volunteering does require an increasingly large amount of coordination. Most not-for-profits in our community and across Canada are quite small. They have perhaps one, perhaps two full-time staff members. Their budgets are $200,000, $300,000, maybe $400,000 a year. And so all of their services are delivered by teams of volunteers, 50, 100, 200 volunteers, all managed by one or two people. That's a significant administrative challenge. So a big part of what we do is work with and coach and help not-for-profits manage that in a way that's to the benefit of the organization and the individual volunteers. I started off by mentioning the impact, the economic impact of volunteering, but we all know that a healthy community is not driven just by the economy, right? Healthy communities encourage the arts and culture and sports and recreation and alleviation of poverty and other social ills. They try to knit together the social fabric. All of that in our community is driven in a large measure by volunteers, and all of that is at risk if we are not diligent in continuing to encourage and engage in volunteerism. So what can we do? Not just you as councillors, but everyone in this room. There are three things, at least, as I can see it. The first is to talk about it. Talk
your
about
last
volunteerism.
minute, David.
Thank you. Talk about volunteerism with everyone that you know, with your friends, your neighbors, your co-workers, everyone you come across. The second is be very open-minded about the nature of volunteerism as it continues to grow and change. Be willing to adapt and change and grow with that. And then finally, as you have already done, continue to show appreciation to those members of the community who are volunteering, who are giving their time and efforts for the betterment of us all. This does conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for coming in, and don't go away. We have some questions. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation today, David. I just wanted to commend you and your team, specifically Jane. I know she couldn't be here today, but myself and Sherry Roberts are working collaboratively with Jane to address service gaps for people with disabilities across the region. And I just want to note Jane's diligence in bringing together a collaborative team and thinking outside of the box of what could be done. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was a snappy response. Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Redmond. Just a couple of questions. In terms of outreach, because we know, and you said this, that it's hard to get volunteers. Is there collaboration that's happening with the school boards for those youth who have to get those mandatory volunteer hours? Can you just speak to some of that, if that's happening?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Jane can go into a lot more details were she here, but certainly youth is one of our key focuses. I mentioned the decline in numbers of volunteers. Typically, historically, youth have been the ones who have volunteered in the greatest numbers, and seniors have volunteered the most hours, and both of those groups are declining. And so we have a number of things that we do. We have a number of programs that we operate out of the volunteer center that encourage young people to come and volunteer, and we really teach them about the opportunities that exist, not just the individual things that they might know about, but broaden their perspective on it. And a significant resource that we have for them as well is we operate on our website something of a brokerage, if you will, for volunteer opportunities, where members of the community who want to volunteer can go in, give their age, their interests, how much time they have, what they'd like to volunteer in, and what they're returned with is a number of opportunities from not-for-profits that are currently looking for people to volunteer for them. And we've seen a lot of uptake from that from younger people as well.
Thank you. Just one more follow-up with that. And just in terms of, I know Councillor Hunick mentioned kind of the barriers from a persons with disabilities perspective, but what other barriers are you looking to address, or have you started to implement, thinking about, potentially socioeconomic reasons why people cannot volunteer and offsetting some of that? If you could speak to some of that.
Yeah, excellent question. And I did allude to that in my presentation of the lowering of barriers. One part of the community that volunteers at a somewhat lower rate than is the average is very often newcomers don't volunteer at the same level. There's a number of reasons for that. One of them is there's a lot involved in coming to a new community. You're just trying to figure your own stuff out, let alone giving to others. So we have increasingly made outreaches to local community groups and so on, letting them know the opportunities that exist for volunteering. And I strongly believe that it's an excellent way to integrate oneself into a community, to get to know the community, to get to know one's neighbors, is volunteering, that volunteers benefit from their activities just as much as the people that they're serving. So that's the message that we're trying to communicate, that yes, it's busy and it's hard and it's challenging to adapt to a new living situation and all of those things, but this can actually help with that process and help it feel more like home. So those are just a few of the things that we're reaching out with.
Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deutschman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Dave, thanks for coming in. I had the pleasure of attending your dinner last summer on behalf of Chair Redmond at the Victoria Park Pavilion, and I was extremely impressed with the organization and the people. And one of the things I touched on, and it relates to the lower, I made a note of the lowering the barriers, and I was thinking about the computer program when you just referenced where you're matching volunteers up, and I thought that was quite innovative. And I appreciate too the fact that in many organizations, people can write checks, but checks don't lift the boxes into the trucks. Checks don't sort the produce for people to be able to get the meals. And I'm wondering, is there something that you would look to the region to help promote your organization to get the word out more in the community about the importance of volunteering and the opportunities? And I see it as a low barrier entry opportunity when you can just go on a website and match up with something. And I thought that was quite innovative, because I was at the dinner table with the gentlemen that were that had produced that software program. So you could just touch on that?
Sure. As far as what we're looking for from the region, that's probably a question I'll leave to Jane to perhaps do as a follow-up in more detail, in addition to the general things that I've done or mentioned. The website is, that's actually being rolled out and been adopted by a number of volunteer centers across Canada. And we're also in the midst of significantly revamping that. It's actually quite an old system in technology terms, about 12 years old. So over the next year, one of the things that we're doing is investing pretty significantly in the refurbishment of that. We have some corporate donations, and we'll also be looking for donations from various sources for that as well.
Just one more question, Chair. I mean, you'd mentioned a dollar value in terms of what volunteerism contributes to. Now, was that a Canada-wide number, or something a billion or something?
Yeah.
Or is that just here?
2.7% of gross domestic product is what the conference board said. So just looking at the regionalized gross domestic product, it's 1.2 billion in this region.
Yeah, okay, that's phenomenal. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. Again, thank you for the presentation. For instance, if they want volunteers at the hospital, do they go through you, or do people go directly to the hospital? Or at the food bank, do they go directly to the food bank, or do they go through you? Just curious about how you operate.
That's an excellent question. Certainly people can go directly to the food bank or the hospital or wherever they'd want to volunteer. Sometimes they'll come to us, and our role is to act as a conduit and connect them directly to the not-for-profit. During the pandemic, we helped organize the volunteering for the various levels of government, because each organization has different criteria and processes that they follow when they bring volunteers in. But we largely act as a conduit and a connector between the not-for-profit as well as the volunteer. That being said, we do try to help the not-for-profits, especially the smaller ones, understand how to best utilize volunteers. And similarly, we also try to manage expectations of volunteers. There are some people who will want to volunteer and think it will be more than it is, or think it might turn into a job, or those sorts of things. So that's part of what we do as well, is help coach the volunteers to make sure that they have the best possible experience that they can as well.
I was wondering, in terms of outreach, even similar to a job fair, do you have a volunteer fair or partner with the job fair? I was just, as a teacher for many years, and I just know, like, if the kids could, not everything is online. Like, if they see some people and get some ideas that they, can actually go to. And I know in terms of teachers are good volunteers once they retire, because they can retire generally at 55. But a lot of them don't want to volunteer at something that they have to be at all year. So I think even to highlight jobs that people can do, for a few months or can come and go. Because I was amazed at the number of people who said, I would volunteer, and their but was, but I go to Florida, for 2 months, and then they don't. So, thank you.
Excellent comments, and those opportunities exist. And we have done something similar to job fairs in the past. We haven't since the pandemic and the lockdowns shut everything, and it had been dwindling leading up to that, a lot of those in-person things, but it's something we're always looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, those are all the questions. Thank you very much. Anyone that's watching this on live stream, they could go to your website, which is Volunteer Waterloo Region.
That is correct.
Thank you very much.
Please. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next delegation is virtual. Jessica Linthorne, Interim CEO of Nuclear Innovation Institute, co-chair of Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition, and Ian Boddy, Mayor of Owen Sound and co-chair of the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition. I welcome you, and you have 5 minutes, and you have the floor.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair Redmond. Congratulations. Not congratulations. We bring greetings from the north to you and your council. I'm Mayor Ian Boddy of the City of Owen Sound. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Southern Ontario Isotope Coalition. Joining me is Jessica Linthorne, a co-chair as well, and the president and CEO of the Nuclear Innovation Institute. Other co-chairs are James Skoniak from Bruce Power, a executive vice president, and Theron Solomon, who is a counselor of the Chippewas of Nawash Band Council. When we looked at the opportunities for medical isotopes, we were trying to determine the best thing to do, and we thought that a regional collaborative partnership would be best, made up of municipalities, industry, education, institutions, as well as medical and research. And so with that, we've started to build out a coalition. I'm going to pass the mic over to Jessica.
Great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Nice to see you, Madam Chair. So we do want to start by recognizing that the isotopes are produced on the territory of the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation at the Bruce Power site. And maybe I'll ask for the next slide. So as referenced, the Southwestern Ontario Isotope Coalition was formed last June in partnership with the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council, who released a report called Isotopes for Hope, and I'll speak to that in a moment. And then under Mayor Boddy's leadership with the City of Owen Sound, and certainly the Nuclear Innovation Institute as a nonprofit organization, we're very proud to be part as well. Next slide, please. So we do recognize an opportunity to build out the value chain, which will support the isotope production and maybe down the road, the processing of medical isotopes as well here in Southwestern Ontario. We're looking forward to working together collaboratively, recognizing that the large isotope production source is here in our region in Bruce County at Bruce Power. Next slide, please. So we work here very collaboratively in Bruce Grey and Huron. We're excited to expand into Southwestern Ontario with this particular initiative because we do see power in working together and rising above typical municipal boundaries. Really looking forward to addressing and increasing awareness of the future demand of medical isotopes, but also just the production of isotopes here in our region. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, the Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council released a report, I believe it was last March of 23, called the Isotopes for Hope report. And certainly I would encourage members of the council to have a look at that report if you're curious. It does speak to global demand. It also talks about where we can support this industry and reduce barriers. One of the things I love to remind, I've heard James Skoniak, the chair of CNIC, say it a number of times, the world is looking to Canada for more isotope production, and the world needs more Canada. And we're really excited to have a look at some of these boundaries of infrastructure, logistics, market adoption, economics, and labor and training as we move forward collectively in Southwestern Ontario. Next slide, please. So some of our next steps. So this was the photo is I'm very proud of this photo. This was our launch event last October, where we had a number of public and private academic groups, medical research groups, entrepreneurs, logistic partners coming together to say, yep, we'll do this together. Let's find a way to build this value chain, to build this ecosystem, really celebrate the assets in the region, including power and their isotope production system. And so we are meeting collaboratively with these partners on a quarterly basis, and these meetings are virtual. And we're building a roadmap together, as mentioned, to build that ecosystem out. We're doing delegations like this to increase awareness of the isotope production at Bruce Power that's serving the world. And we're working together to secure external funding to move these initiatives forward. I'll pass it back to Mayor Boddy for closing remarks.
So, Chair Redmond, as we looked at opportunities, we looked at things like the research triangle in North Carolina, and certainly we looked at the great things that have happened with collaboration in the Waterloo region with the communications technology development over the last, well, most of our lives. This is an opportunity for all of us to work together, and we'd be very pleased if the region of Waterloo would join us in our coalition and help us develop and bring more of that industry to Canada and keep developing it, be world leaders that we hope to be.
Thank you so much for your delegation. I see we have a question already. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So it looks like you're looking for a partnership from the region. So what would that partnership entail? Would you want a representative from the region to sit on the committee? Or please explain to me what you want for us.
Sure, thank you. And through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. Yeah, so what we're doing with our collaborative partners is we're asking partners to appoint a representative that will join us, that becomes a contact person for the organization, looking for that quarterly engagement to help us share the message, so providing updates back to the region of Waterloo. We've been working a lot with economic development officers. We've been working with elected officials as well, and CIOs in some capacity too. So we do have a variety of positions representing municipal partners at the table. I will add that we're not looking for any financial support. We're looking for partnership at the table with that engagement to say, yep, we want to develop this ecosystem together. We see a global opportunity that Southwestern Ontario can step forward and move together with. The terms of reference, we are certainly welcome to circulate that outline that expectation. Not looking financial, looking for engagement and support to move this ecosystem and develop this opportunity for Southwestern Ontario. Thanks for the question.
As a follow-up, Madam Chair, I just wanted to state, I believe there was an isotope shortage a couple of years ago. I don't know if it was out there. And it affected a lot of medical surgeries and treatments. And so the issue is that isotope is a huge demand, a medical one, and we need to sustain it. I will leave it to your jurisdiction as to what we're going to do next.
Okay, before I intervene, I think I'll go to Councillor Harris, who has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your presentation tonight. I'm sure following Councillor Foxton's remarks that you'll find no shortage of likely volunteers to work with your organization. Here in the region of Waterloo, we're strong supporters of the nuclear industry, having some significant large employers like BWXT and many employees that likely make their way to Bruce Power, even from the region on a daily basis. So, thanks for your presentation and what you do and the advocacy for this particular isotope need here in Canada and even beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to follow up to the delegation, I would ask if council agrees that staff take this away and come back with a report. And just to echo both the comments of my colleagues, Councillor Foxton and Harris, not only are medical isotopes hugely important to Canada and the world, where there was a time when we were the top producer internationally, and we do have incredible industrial leaders in this community like BXWT or BWXT, and we would be happy to pursue this. So thank you for your delegation, and I guess, do I have consensus with staff that we will, or we'll ask staff to bring that back? So again, thank you so much for your delegation.
Great. Thank you very much.
So next delegation is Patrick Gilbride, Executive Director of Reep Green Solutions. Patrick, you're here by yourself, I understand?
That's correct, yeah.
So welcome, you have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Good evening, councillors and staff. We're pleased to be here this evening to share with you our most recent impact report and some of the results and stories that have Waterloo Region residents have achieved with our support. So in 2020, we set a target to empower people to do 10,000 meaningful actions by the year 2030. This report marks our 3rd year of tracking those actions, and as you can see, people in our community are hungry to get involved in climate change solutions. 2,000 of those actions were recorded over the last year, which marks an acceleration in interest in everything from installing heat pumps to flood-proofing entire neighborhoods. With the wind down of the Greener Homes incentives from the federal government, we are in jeopardy of losing this important momentum. But first, we'd like to share a few of the stories of the people impacted by our work. As you can see, Reep's Energy Advisor highlighted several opportunities to further improve Corrine's 70-year-old home. She invested in a heat pump added insulation strategically, and also draft-proofed in other parts of her homes. As a result, she had a 32% reduction in her energy costs and was able to maximize the benefits of her investments. We visited 662 homes like Corinne's last year, resulting in 172 heat pumps installed. At English conversation circles, we met newcomers to talk about simple ways to reduce their energy consumption and improve their energy literacy. We're also pleased to partner with the Region of Waterloo on an upcoming webinar to educate newcomers and the general public about our drinking water supply. The wells where we draw our drinking water are increasingly under threat from salt use that is used in the wintertime. Through a program run through the region, we help to educate both residential and business owners about ways to reduce their salt for winter maintenance. Over the past year, property owners, with our help, have installed 724 Healthy Yards features, everything from rain gardens to permeable paving to native tree plantings. People have done this and contributed to reducing their stormwater runoff and expanding our urban tree canopy. And in Reep's tradition of using an evidence-informed approach to all of our programs, we are using data to map where climate vulnerability is highest in our community. Our new community canopy program aims to increase tree canopy in equity-deserving areas. This is the first year of our new tree nursery operation. It has been a true barn-raising effort. The first delegation certainly resonated with me tonight because this is certainly a volunteer-driven operation. Volunteers like Marie have helped to collect local seeds and helped to plant them this spring by using locally collected seed exclusively. We can be assured that the trees that we grow will be naturally adapted to our climate. We co-lead climate action with Sustainable Waterloo Region in partnership with all of our area municipalities. This year, we released the 2022 inventory report, which demonstrates the urgency for us to reduce our emissions from travel and the buildings where we live and work.
Patrick, you have 1 minute remaining.
Okay, no problem. Our Zero Waste Challenge is a fun initiative that everyone can participate in. The Zero Waste Challenge runs throughout the month of October, and it's a judgment-free zone, so we'd encourage everyone here to register and participate. Last year, I learned the uncomfortable truth about my own unhealthy potato chip habit. In terms of our financials, we saw significant growth in fee-for-service revenue as people scheduled home energy evaluations while the greener homes rebates were still available. Those earnings will help to provide some financial stability for us over the coming year as those energy evaluations abate. And finally, we'd like to say thank you. We couldn't do it without you. We are grateful for your support in all of its many forms, especially as one of our core funders. Core funding is the constant that helps our organization weather shocks like the end to the Greener Homes program. Lastly, we'd also like to take the opportunity to say a special thanks to the municipal staff at the region who we get to work with all year long, in particular Megan Eastwood, Caitlin Tozer, Stephanie Shiflett, Dan Mahar, Nicole Haynes, Eric Thuss, Alyssa Roth, Colleen Brown, and Tyler Marshall, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Patrick, for coming in and for your 20-plus years, Reep as an organization's 20-plus years of doing this work for our community. And it's good to see that, you know, that you're continuing to have an impact and help people understand how they can make some changes that are, you know, from relatively simple to much more, you know, complicated or complex ones. So thanks very much. It's really, really important work that you do. My question is about the slide that you had about salt use. Mm-hmm. I was wondering about the amount of salt, Because I think are you talking specifically about the amount of salt that people use on their, driveways, sidewalks, or are you, and it being too high? But is that also an issue for the region and local municipalities when they're doing, when they're doing snow clearing? Is that all a problem that we really need to take a look at?
Absolutely. There's been studies done on this, and one of the major contributors is actually in the private sector parking lots. That's one reason that the region of Waterloo is a leader in the Smart About Salt program. And we do actually have advisors that go out and help specific business owners to reduce their salt use and use strategies that will reduce the amount of salt that goes directly into our groundwater. So that's definitely a major contributor. Homeowners can certainly do their part, but the private sector, large parking lots, certainly there's also snow clearing on public lands, which is a big contributor as well, although certainly a lot of mitigation factors are in place to a certain extent there.
And thank you for that. And is there something else? I mean, we live in Canada and we know that salt helps to, I think it's reduce the bonding, if I'm using the right term, like of snow bonding to the pavement. But is there something else that Reep has that you would recommend to us that could be used instead of salt? Like, I think at certain temperatures it stops working in that, but is there an alternative that's maybe coming on market to reduce the amount of salt that gets into our water?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no silver bullets. And the one thing I would caution is there's a lot of greenwashing in the products that are available at hardware stores or things like that. But if you look at the ingredients closely, if you notice chloride, it's essentially salt. But yeah, all other alternatives all have different environmental issues. If you use sand, then it can also, create problems in our waterways if it's done at scale. So it's really sort of a, specific approach and going property to property, which is the hard work that we're trying to do. Yeah.
Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Redmond. Just a quick question about the heat pumps, because we're hearing a lot about that.
Sure.
What are the trends that you've been seeing over the year? I know you said last year you visited 662 homes, but how many, what is that trend? And just in terms of costs and savings with switching to a heat pump, what does that look like in terms of a cost per household?
Mm-hmm. So certainly heat pumps are by far the most energy efficient, and we know that we need to transition off of fossil fuels, and they're one way that we can do this. There's a large sort of variance, obviously, between the efficiency of heat pumps. The one thing that we really sort of advise people is to make sure that their heat pumps are sized correctly, because that can really affect the efficiency. And often, because it is sort of a new industry in this region, they're not always sized correctly. So take the due diligence, make sure you get your quotes. We actually are starting up a heat pump coaching service for people to help with how to properly size their heat pumps so that they maximize their efficiency. Unfortunately, I think I'm sort of dancing around your question, but.
Just asking for like a ballpark. So, I have a 1,200 square foot home. Is it looking like that heat pump's going to be about, $10,000? Are there any rebates for that? Like, just in terms of a little bit of education and awareness around that piece to impact homeowners.
Right. So unfortunately, they were incentivized through the Greener Homes program. Enbridge Gas customers, there is a rebate available through Enbridge Gas to offset some of those costs. But similarly, again, I'm avoiding your question, but the size and therefore the cost of these heat pumps can vary considerably. If you're looking at just a ductless unit, you can be targeted and install that in a room, and those can be a couple $1,000s. But if you're looking at your whole home connected into your ductwork, they can be $10,000 to $20,000. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Foxton?
Thank you, and not to steal your thunder, I bought a heat pump, and it cost about $10,000 for a 2,700 square foot home. My gas bill was about $130 a month, went down to $100. No, went down to $30. We saved about $100, but the energy bill goes up because you're using more energy. So, and my husband's just working out that calculation to see exactly how much we do save on it. But it's quite a good system. It really works well. And the rebate at that time we received, out of the $10,000 we had to pay for it, we got $7,000 back, which was a great deal.
I guess that's a personal testimonial. Councillor McCabe.
Sorry, I just wanted to also add around the cost of heat pumps, because we put one in a few years ago too. Works fantastic, but it's not just a heat pump. It actually acts as an air conditioner too, so you get 2 for 1. And one of the big benefits is that when it's running, you don't hear it like you hear air conditioners. So that is
they're far more efficient than air conditioners. In terms of energy
it's so
use,
quiet. You don't hear it when you're sitting in your patio. Cools and heats. So there you go. Get a heat pump, people.
So I don't have a heat pump, Patrick, but what I would like to do is do a throwdown challenge to everybody on this council to enter into the zero waste challenge. How many people have done it in the past? You will learn a lot about yourself, and it's very challenging, and I would invite anybody watching this and everybody in the gallery to try it because it's very instructive. It's the month of October, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So thank you very much for coming in. I see no more testimonials, but you've been very informative, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next delegation is Acer Bonaparte from Kitchener. Acer, are you with us? Welcome, you have the floor, and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, thanks for taking the time to listen to me. I'm going to try to keep it brief, but 100 Vic, the encampment needs lights. I'm there regularly doing outreach with Fight Back, and I'm tired of hearing stories from disabled residents who've fallen and injured themselves. I'm tired of hearing from female residents saying they've been sexually assaulted or flashed. I'm tired of hearing about housed people coming by and verbally assaulting people there. I'm tired of hearing about people coming in and physically assaulting. Unhoused people are a vulnerable target. They're less likely to report crimes, and people know this and take advantage of that fact. A few months ago, we were talking with a city staff person, and he offered us $1,000 to get solar paneled lights. But when it came time to kind of go through with that, the conversation fizzled out, and we haven't really heard back from them. What needs to happen before we get lights? A murder? Those sidewalk street lamps used to be turned on, but they were turned off because residents were supposedly stealing power from them. But is that really so much more expensive than having round-the-clock security? Have any of you spent a night at the encampment? I have. I challenge you to. Try to go to the porta potties in the dark of night with rats skittering around. It's kind of terrifying. If you really care, install lights. We all have hopefully all of us have homes we can go to that are well lit and cozy. Give the encampment residents the same luxury. That's all.
Thank you very much for coming in to share your concerns and thoughts. I see no questions, so thank you. The next delegation who's registered is Aaron Jackson from Wilmot. Aaron, are you here? Hi. Welcome. You have 5 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for having me here today and for your full attention. I want to especially thank Councillor Salonen for encouraging me to come here to the Regional Council. My name is Aaron Jackson. I'm 16 years old, and I live in New Hamburg on Nafziger Road. The Farmland Assembly is quite close to my home. I attend Waterloo Oxford Secondary School and plan to go to the University of Guelph to study agriculture. For me, farming is not just a goal, but it's a dream. I am here as a delegate, a representative of not just Wilmot, but the young generation here today fighting for our precious farmland. The young workers with big dreams and a passion for agriculture, the people who can't quite vote yet, but still want to make a difference. This is who I'm representing. We understand that this issue is so much bigger than the fact that the farmland is being lost. We know that the destruction of this special land will negatively impact our community and the generations to come. Not only that, the agriculture industry will be at risk, as well as the effectiveness of the government system. High school students in the region voice concerns about the inevitable traffic that will come with an industrial development as big as this one. How much traffic will thousands of drivers bring? We all have school, jobs, and farms to get to. How much more dangerous are we making the roads for kids who want to walk, bike, and interact in our community? We have a beautiful and peaceful place here with lots of natural resources like the groundwater source and the farmland itself. The regional official plan says it best in Chapter 6 titled Supporting the Countryside. It says, in quote, "Agriculture forms an important part of the region's economy and provides many positive benefits. Each job in the primary agriculture sector has been shown to support an additional 4 jobs in the wider regional economy." Since the plan was introduced in 2010, nothing has changed. If anything, protecting the farmland is even more crucial given Ontario's daily losses, which are irreversible. Farming has made huge advancements in the last century, but the future generation cannot continue this progress if the land is destroyed. You will be making it impossible for us to achieve our goals of providing for our community and our country. This needs to stop because it is wrong. Not only are we losing a precious resource, but there are existing plans like the Regional Official Plan and Provincial Policy Statement meant to protect agricultural land, which are being ignored. Our community has shown strong opposition to this land grab. We rely on you to represent our needs. How can younger generations trust the council when this is the example that has been set? The young generation in all of Wilmot want a better future, but how can we contribute if we're being excluded and information is withheld? Our government system exists for a reason. It relies on transparency, honesty, and communication for it to work. The region has emphasized the need for jobs and investments, but no matter how beneficial the Wilmot Assembly may seem, it loses its value if it's not done the right way. In regards to the report on the corn destruction, it was informative and failed to outline the financial implications. The estimated loss from the destroyed corn is $500,000, which should have been included along with the removal costs. Additionally, it failed to mention the costs of developing a mega industrial site, such as the necessary road improvements and drainage upgrades. Another inaccuracy in the report was how many jobs the new site is expected to bring to the Waterloo region. While the East Side employment lands in Cambridge are meant to bring 7,000 jobs to the region, the Wilmot Land Assembly is said to provide only a few thousand jobs. In this light, the report should not be accepted as is. My job today is to delegate. The action of delegation is to assign a task.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. Or responsibility to another person. I'm delegating the responsibility for you to listen to the public and truly care about our concerns and the fact that we are not a willing host, as this is your job. And for the council to reject this report, as it should be reviewed and the process of the premature corn destruction should be investigated further to determine if all the procedures were properly followed. We ask why our concerns are not being taken seriously. What is stopping you from carrying out your expectation from everyone here to represent your people? When students said in our area that if our area is going to grow, the farmers shouldn't have to sell if they don't want to. It is disheartening that our farmers are being treated with no respect or appreciation. You need to understand that the support behind the Fight for Farmland movement goes beyond the farmers, the voters, and the business owners. The support comes from the youth. We urge you to consider the young people, your kids and grandchildren. What are you doing to better their future? One thing is for sure, God didn't make the land prime and farmable if he didn't want to be farmed. This is our future and our land too. And on behalf of the young generation behind the Fight for Farmland movement, we are not a willing host. Thank you.
Erin, thank you very much for coming in. I'm going to caution the gallery. Yes, thank you. Jazz hands work if you want to show that you're enthusiastic, with no clapping and no verbalizing. Erin, thank you very much. I have a couple of questioners. Councillor Salonen.
Erin, I was so happy to see you here tonight. Thank you very much for coming and delegating to my regional colleagues and regional colleagues. Erin already came and spoke to my council, and I suggest you go back and watch her delegation from 2 meetings ago, as it was very impactful. So thank you again, Erin, for coming.
Thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Yeah, forgive me, Chair, and thank you for your presentation tonight. However, my question actually stemmed from the previous delegate, Chair. So maybe if there's no further questions and we excuse this delegate, perhaps I can just ask a question of staff on the previous one that I just couldn't get my hand in time.
So, Aaron, thank you very much. I did see your hand raised, Councillor Harris. If it's a question of staff, how we hold it till after all the delegations and we'll come back. So write your question down and I'll write your name down, okay? The next delegation is Mark Reeser, Waterloo Federation of Agriculture. Welcome, Mark. You have 5 minutes and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Mark Reeser. I am a farmer in Wilmot Township, and I'm presenting tonight in my capacity as Vice President of the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture. On August the 28th, we stood here and implored you to support Councillor Solonen's motion to direct staff to account for and justify their actions with regard to the destruction of 160 acres of corn in Wilmot Township. We hope that this report would shed light on why this event took place and who was responsible. Alas, it does neither. It breaks my heart that my region, my Waterloo, no longer cares enough to throw the doors open and thoroughly investigate actions that are neither representative of our culture nor our history, let alone good governance and good management. The report attempts to justify all of the actions taken by stating that they had to abide by a deadline, an arbitrary deadline that they, economic development, set. All they had to do to preserve a food crop was delay the arbitrary deadline by a few weeks. That's all. They specifically and intentionally caused the problem and have now attempted to justify it in the report. No one from Wilmot Township, no one from the region, and certainly no one from economic development contacted the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture, nor any other farm organization, and asked for information or advice about how to best manage the crop in question. No one. If your house is on fire, do you not call the fire department? If you need to fix your water line, do you not call before you dig? If you have questions about agriculture, why would you not contact the organization that represents agriculture and farmers in this township and this community? The whole debacle illustrates what happens when the hollowed out regional planning department is no longer able to manage our official plan and plan effectively. Waterloo Region, with its record of transparency, consultation, and visionary planning, was the envy of planning departments across Canada. This is what happens when visionary planning, transparency, and community engagement disappear. What an incredibly sad and tragic loss. What can be done now that the corn crop is destroyed and no one has admitted responsibility? Begin with an apology. An apology to each and every resident of Waterloo Region. An apology for not following our official plan. An apology for putting economic development in charge of this project seemingly without oversight or involvement from other departments. An apology for not consulting with the very group that is most affected, farmers. An apology for wasting tax dollars that we entrusted to you. An apology to all those people and organizations in Waterloo Region who could have benefited enormously from a donation of hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of having it wasted on destroying a food crop. A sincere apology is always accompanied by action. Take the Wilmot Prime Farmland Megasite Assembly off the table.
Mark, you've got 1 minute remaining.
Because it's the right thing to do. Thank you. Reinstate and guarantee our commitment to a firm countryside line. Initiate a public process to develop criteria for the location of a new large-scale employment site. Initiate a public process to identify a selection of alternative sites that exclude prime farmland and locations distant from urban infrastructure. Employ an open and transparent process that prioritizes public consultation to select the best possible site. Treat landowners and farmers with respect and never make offers to purchase to anyone unless they are commensurate with the ultimate zoning of that land. To offer any less is a government taking, and I dare say, irresponsible and unethical. And to each and every one of you, both staff and elected, notwithstanding everything I've already said, thank you for what you do. You have a tough job, but I can assure you we will remember if you take members to protect our agricultural landscape, the very land that has provided food for humans here for thousands of years. We, our children, and everyone who comes after us will thank you for expressing the visionary culture that is representative of Waterloo and that has made us a world-renowned success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to acknowledge you coming tonight. And just for clarification, which I think we established at Wilmot Council, the Waterloo Federation of Agriculture is the largest agricultural membership group in the area, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and roughly how many members is it?
Probably about 600, but noting that a significant higher number of farmers don't participate in an organized farm organization, and we endeavor to look after their interests also.
Yes, thank you very much.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you again, Mark, for coming in. I know you've been here a few times, and thank you for the work that you do with the Waterloo, the Federation of Agriculture. I'm just curious because you speak so passionately about the need to preserve farmland and the commitment to the countryside line that councils at the region have had for so many, many years. And so I'm just curious about if you're concerned about some of the additional land that's been added recently to the regional official plan, and what your thoughts were about that by the area municipalities.
Do I have 5 more minutes?
No.
I think you just get to talk now.
Of course we're concerned. We participated in the official plan, in the review. We have participated in every official plan review for the past 30 years. We are more than disappointed in the actions taken by the provincial government. We have a history here in Waterloo Region of doing 2 things: building a dynamic, innovative urban landscape, and at the same time, preserving farmland and building an equally innovative landscape outside of the urban boundary. And we've done that really, really well. And we are so disappointed that all the actions that we have taken as a community are in peril. And this last land assembly being just one example.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mark. The next delegation is Adam van Birgedit. Welcome, Adam. You have the floor and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair and councillors. I'm Adam van Bergijk. That's the pronunciation of my name.
You said it much better than me.
And the translation is mountain oak. Anyway, I'm gonna have a tough position here because I cannot do better as Mark did. But I will start with a little bit history. In the late 80s, actually on April 26th, 1986, we experienced the big collapse from Chernobyl. The aftermath was humongous. The anxiety, what we have to do with our crops, keep our cows in, and the crops had to be destroyed. Even that, we had some experience with dioxin pollution and several other spills in our neighboring, expanding industrial site. Animals have to be kept inside. People has to be in the house. That's one of the reasons, not the main reason, but one of the reasons we left the Netherlands. In September 96, we found a place here in Wilmot. Saw this community as a good place to farm and to prosper and to great in this community. We came as a family, my wife and 3 children. And they have together now 11 children, and they're all farming, and the grandchildren are all involved in their farms, working with the cows and equipment to be good stewards of our lands. On the last New Hamburg Fall Fair, still considered agriculture, accent on it, 10 of our grandchildren were showing their calves in the 4-H competition. It makes us as grandparents thankful and blessed to see that. Our families are working together on the farm with our Canadian friends, helpers, and employees. Currently, Mountain Oak Farm and Mountain Oak Cheese employ 20 people directly, full-time and part-time. On the farm we own is already a request to build a new barn, what is planning to milk cows in the near future. But there are so many questions coming up now. How will this area look like? In the plan from those governing bodies, we're not sure who is driving the force behind this. But the plan for the industrial site, what is strangely falls outside of a planning and MZO notifications. What kind of industry is coming our way? This will have a very impact on our society and very important on our safety. We don't want to get the same as back in the Netherlands, to experience pollution and spills. Several citizens of New Hamburg and Baden will leave if this will happen. What will be the impact on our water supply? We had already to drill another well. What significant deeper to go to find enough water for our needs? Because the existing well slowed down, and we are not the only farmer.
Adam, you have a minute remaining.
We had that problem. The quality of this water is not great, so we had to install an RO system, what cost around $250,000 to purify the water. Plus this system, and I get back to where one of the former speakers was talking about, we don't need any softener salt. How will the future for our community look like in regards to transportation, water, sewage, environmental, etc.? Is it still safe to invest as an agriculture business? What will the impact be for Mountain Oak Cheese? A lot of our clients or visitors like the agriculture area. To what will that change? But Mountain Oak is not the only affected business. What if expropriation happens? What should not happen in our hopefully still democratic society, where we can find replacement land with the same quality for our need for supply, our feed for our animals, but also this will have a very impact on our nutrient management plan. What will be the cost to drive back and forth from who knows where, while we do our utmost best to keep our carbon footprint as small as possible. We also rent the farm at the east side, what is owned by Wiebenoude, who is paralyzed and has his property adjusted for his needs, being in a wheelchair. How is his future look like? Do we stand as a community to make him whole?
Adam, can you sum up, please?
Yes. In the meeting room in Wilmot Township, on the plaque behind the chair, states building is a sure foundation. How do we do that? To me, have an open and honest approach and do everything to understand other people with respect. And we are not willing sellers. Thank you.
Adam, thank you for coming in. Thank you, everybody who is using jazz hands and not clapping. I have a couple questions. Councillor Salonen.
Adam, I just wanted to say thank you for coming in and for sharing more of your story.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hunick.
Adam, thank you for the influence that you have on our community and your legacy in the Netherlands. And I don't have all the answers for you, but thank you for the great questions that you raise tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming in. The next delegation is Amy Susanna Compton from Waterloo. Amy Susanna, welcome. You have the floor, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and councillors. I've had difficulty drafting a response to this report on the corn shredding. The regional staff report identifies as a blatant lack of democratic process and accountability. It reads like fiction, but somehow this is the reality here in Waterloo Region. The report stated financial implications were NA, not applicable. Are our taxpayers supposed to believe that there were no financial implications in shredding 160 acres of field corn? What did you pay the farmers from Strathroy for their labor? What did you compensate them for the fuel of traveling with large equipment that distance? We've been told it could be many thousands of dollars. Those are direct financial implications, and they shouldn't be denied or hidden in an investigative report. Besides, those direct financial implications are all the implications of what the corn could have sold for, either in 5 weeks as silage or in 10 weeks as mature corn. That money first had to be compensated to the farmer who sold their land before harvest, but could have been made back by actually selling the corn. 2 financial losses on the same crop, all paid by our tax dollars. That waste of hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars is unacceptable and should be stated in this report. Under Section 5 of the report is a long list of the studies that need to be completed on this site. Why couldn't a few less invasive studies have been completed during the few weeks that the corn would have taken to mature to silage, instead of giving it the highly invasive study first? Another reality is that we remain unwilling hosts. The facts in this report show that we, the farmers and the community, have more knowledge of this land and its value, yet we remain completely ignored. Had you asked any of the local farmers, they would have told you that there were harvest options earlier than 12 weeks away. The report states that the land was not being assembled for any specific business or end user. So why was there such a tight manufactured timeline? Even the original timeline, also given alongside the threat of expropriation, was that the farmers and landowners were to be expropriated in August. That would have given you time for a mature corn crop. The March to August timeline is a very short timeline in comparison to other land assemblies, as has been noted by several local journalists. But looking at how the timeline is framed inside the beginning and ending of the growing season, I can draw but 2 conclusions. Either this plan was drawn up by someone very ignorant of agriculture, and if so, why would someone with so little of understanding of what they were doing be put in charge of such a significant land assembly? Or it was intentional. I'm not sure which is worse. If there were 6 established technology businesses that needed to move, there would be discussions, negotiations, and an appropriate timeline established between all parties. No one would do this to a tech company or an industrial company or an educational establishment. Why is it acceptable to overturn the established careers, businesses, and homes and farmers in such a short timeline? In a time of significant food insecurity, where the Food Bank of Waterloo Region reports 1 in 10 local households struggle to put food on the table, how was the destruction of a growing food source ever considered while establishing your manufactured timeline? Over the next few weeks, many of you will be attending Oktoberfest, a staple celebration in the region. The sauerkraut on your sausages comes from one of our farms in Wilmot. The cheese curds on your poutine and gourmet pizza comes from another of our farms threatened by this proposed mega site. Dairy products are linked to our farms in Wilmot. Councillors, you should be proud of what we produce in Wilmot, proud enough to protect it. You should be celebrating what our agriculture provides our community, our region, and our country, not destroying 160 acres of that produce. I find the term used in this report of generational investment an odd way of describing this land assembly. When cared for, farmland lasts forever. That's a generational investment. I have yet to encounter a functional factory as old as the fields my great-great-grandparents settled here in the region. This report isn't an investigation as promised. It was prepared by the Economic Development Department and reviewed by the same department. There appears to be no outside review and no one to hold the report to account. It's one-sided, just like this land assembly. I call for our regional official plan to once again be taken seriously. I call for the countryside line to be restored, and for any mega industrial sites to be located in a better place than in the middle of our best farmland. I call for the accountability and for the transparency we have been asking for since March. And I call for you, councillors, to stand up and support our unwillingness to host this land assembly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no questions. Thank you for coming in. Next delegation is John Jordan from Wilmot. John, are you in the audience? Welcome, you have the podium, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is John Jordan. I live on Bleems Road, across from the 770 acres of prime farmland that is in great peril. On July 24th of this year, hired heavy equipment operators, and notice I didn't call them farmers, from outside of this region were hired to destroy 160 acres of food. I was there and took photos of those who were paid by government to destroy food. Food that could have been used for feed for livestock, or even if given a few more weeks, could have been used to produce the thousands of everyday food products that contain corn and feed thousands of people, including the vast numbers that use the food bank. So yes, for those who aren't familiar with food production, this field corn is used for human consumption. But instead, our governments, plural, decided to destroy this crop on the taxpayer's wallet to the tune of pushing $500,000 for reasons of due diligence. Why? That is my first question. It could have waited. I know that none of my questions will be answered by any politician or staff member this evening, or likely ever, nor will you ask me any tough questions after I finish. But I know the media is listening very carefully and will certainly have the same questions for the politicians and staff. Question 2, the report states that the region spoke to multiple livestock feed producers and a biofuel company. Who were these sources? What were the questions asked and what were their replies? And why weren't they in the report? This information should be public knowledge, and if not, well, it seems that there's something to hide. Question 3, September 4th was the first we observed about 10 people walking around the 160-acre parcel of land. This was 42 days after the destruction of the crop and certainly would have been more than a mature livestock feed. But what were the people on the land of the state doing? As it should be public knowledge. The one study I would like to mention is the hydrology studies. If this involves drilling, very little crop would be destroyed in order to drill some holes. To date, we have not witnessed any drilling.
John, you have 1 minute remaining.
And on another note, shouldn't the region be aware of the water and the aquifers on this land? Water that is a huge concern, as Elmira knows all too well. As a side note, in 1989, contaminants were discovered in the aquifer beneath the town of Elmira. The contaminant was linked to Uniroyal Chemicals' manufacturing plant and was identified as the carcinogen NDMA. It's the town's only supply of drinking water. And by the way, that information was sourced at deutschmannlaw.com. Learn from history. 80% of our water in the region is groundwater. The huge risk in this alone should put a complete stop to this whole fiasco. The due diligence glaringly absent in this report is public consultation. Have any of you ever talked to anyone who is affected by this, and not just the immediate landowners? The stress, mental anguish, fear, and many other emotions too many to list are taking a huge negative toll on many people. This should be your first point of due diligence. My last question, who was the person and their position that is ultimately responsible for ordering the destruction of 160 acres of food? We are not a willing host. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I have a couple of questions. Councillor Salonen.
I just wanted to say thank you very much, John, for coming tonight and for posing your questions.
We're not a willing host.
Councillor Shantz. John, you have another question? You got a couple more. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone who presented this evening. And I'm sorry I can't answer your questions, but I do want to clarify something just in case someone listening gets the wrong idea. It was our source of drinking water in Elmira. We don't get our drinking water from there anymore. We get clean drinking water. So I just wanted to clarify that lest someone thinks that we're drinking contaminated water.
Well, my source was deutschmannlaw.com. I don't know. You might want to find out something from whoever that person is, but anyway.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. Nothing with respect to that piece, but I wasn't sure how to approach this, whether it was through a question to the delegation, but this matter is down the line in our agenda, and I wanted to know if the delegate would be interested in having this matter dealt with immediately after all speakers are done.
That would be a decision for council. So if you want, you can ask that after. So the delegate, John, you can sit down. Thank you. That's really not.
I couldn't bring it up as a point of order, and I was going through the rules to see how I could raise it. And
what I would suggest that that's not a fair thing to ask the delegate, that you should make it a point of order and ask council.
Well, it's not a point of order, though. I just was reading the rules about point of order, and it's not considered a point of order. So that's why I did it this way.
I'll put you back in the queue, okay?
Your guidance is appreciated, Madam Chair.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris, you had a question that, you were way past that? Okay, so Councillor Deutschmann, are you going to intervene and suggest that we bring this report forward?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Councillor, do we have, I'm looking for consensus. Is there anybody that we all agree? Okay, so we will bring that forward. So, colleagues, we will then move to matters under Committee of the Whole, and it is 11.1, and it's Land Assembly Due Diligence Impacts, and our acting CEO, Matthew Getsky, is going to introduce this.
Point of order, do we technically need to go into Committee of the Whole to look at this report?
I received consensus, so we're going to go forward.
Thank you. So this report on land assembly and due diligence responds to Council's request to provide an update on the removal of the crop in July 2024 as part of the land assembly process. The report identifies factually what actions were taken to avoid the plowing under the crop and alternative solutions that were sought for using the premature crop once harvested. The removal of premature corn feed was completed as part of the due diligence process, which is still ongoing and in its final stages on the site. Council has asked staff to focus on fair and equitable deals for landowners, and that continues to be the focus of our ongoing negotiations. And understanding that this report was written under, subject to a number of confidentiality obligations with various parties. So I'll leave it there, and staff and I are available for any follow-up questions from Council.
Thank you. So colleagues, this is for information. Councillor Leggett, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mathieu, throughout this whole report, I see repeatedly due diligence timelines, due diligence. So at what point doing due diligence, what would be something that would make us not want to finalize the purchase? What would we have to do in our due diligence?
So through the chair, I think that there's, a number of technical studies help to understand the nature of, again, the soil and the constraints for transforming this into industrial land. So hydrology is definitely a key element here. I would say the archaeological studies that are ongoing right now are also a key element. They would probably not jeopardize the purchase, but they would significantly modify the timelines under which we could make use of the land.
So just to clarify, there would have been nothing found that would have stopped us from purchasing the land for completing any of the deals.
So again, it's general, I would say due diligence is a standard way of assessing all the risks. For example, if there were, but which was very unlikely because this is agricultural land, but if there were a significant source of pollution under this land, this could jeopardize the deal. We know it's extremely unlikely given the nature and the history of that land, but that's part of the normal process to kind of de-risk things for both the seller and the buyer.
Okay, so Madam Chair, if I could just continue for a couple more questions. So Mathieu, since you've been saying that there wouldn't really be anything, I can't even imagine what would be on an agricultural land that would make us not continue. My problem is the timelines for this. If we're looking at an entire big package here, which clearly we have been, and we purchase 1, 2, 3 properties, and some of those don't close, let's say the 5th property doesn't close till spring, then why would we have not delayed the timeline for the crop? Because the package isn't determined by one parcel. It's determined by all of them. So when I hear that Minister Fedeli did not know about the corn crop until he saw it on Twitter, I have to ask, why did we continue? And then after listening to the delegate from the farming community, why weren't they consulted on the crop? I have serious questions about this. This whole due diligence and the timelines, none of it is sitting right with me. So could you please explain better why we had to take the crop down in that timeline if the whole parcel would have been purchased after the last purchase? Like, why did we have to do that?
I can give a first response, and then Matthew Chandy can maybe help me in more detail. But due diligence timelines and requirements, I can't speak to them in open. They're part of the negotiation conversations with all of the parties that are involved. So the nature of these obligations right now, I can't speak to them in open. But I'll maybe ask Matthew if there's any additional information. Oh. Matthew says, no, that's where we have to, again, we're subject to a number of confidential obligations here, so I cannot speak to that.
Okay, thank you. I have to say that I seriously regret any part that I played in any of this, in any of my voting decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I wanted to say that I found this report to be significantly lacking in detail. I considered upon my review that this was like a draft report. And I've got a number of questions. I'm going to ask a few and then go back in the queue. But the suggestion of confidentiality, what document are we talking about that is subjected us to confidentiality at this point? Certainly not the NDA anymore. That document has been blown up. That has been blown up by the Premier and 2 senior ministers of the Crown and a junior minister of the Crown who have used that document initially as a shield and then as a sword. You can't use the document as a shield and a sword and expect that document to still apply. And I can go back to the CBC report of the interview, Madam Chair, that you did, where you talked about how we were working in lockstep with the province. So I would have expected, at a minimum, that this report would have had details of any discussions we had with the province regarding this corn. That, at a minimum, I would have expected in here, because the NDA no longer applies. And we're not subject to that. And I'll ask this question. Why, at the end of the report, we do not have a sign-off or review by legal when we're talking about confidentiality agreements here? So I'd like to ask that question.
So, Fiona, do you want to respond to the sign-off of the report? Through the chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Legal Services did review the report, but it was not set up for sign-off by Legal Services in terms of the final approval authority on it. But it was reviewed.
Well, okay. I'm surprised by that we wouldn't have ensured that we had legal reviewing this when we're talking about confidentiality agreements and whether they still apply. Second question that I have is, the report says the crop was estimated to be 10 to 16 weeks from harvest. In the motion from Councillor Salonen, we had a different timeline in there. And yet this report provides no explanation as to why the amount of time that was in Councillor Salonen's motion was not corrected. So can I get an explanation why it now says 10 to 16 weeks and it did not correct what we had in the original motion?
Through the chair, I think I recall correcting that while the motion was being discussed in the House room.
Sorry, excuse me?
I recall that when we had the conversation in close about the draft motion, I had corrected the timelines that had been initially drafted in the motion.
Well, just to clarify, the motion said, did the motion say, I don't have the motion in front of me, did the motion say 5 to 6 weeks or did it say 10 to 16 weeks?
Councillor Salonen?
So yes, it was corrected. However, it was not corrected to this time period because it was also news to me when I read in here. It was corrected to, if I'm not wrong, I believe it was 5 to 8 weeks versus I was under the impression when I first put forward the motion that it was 4 weeks. So significant time was added between what the correction was provided by staff for my motion that did pass, and the language would be recorded as different, as a discrepancy from what's present in this report.
Good. I'll go back in the queue, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I also was surprised by this report. I appreciate and recognize the legal context of some things that cannot be shared in open. However, I mean, even the fact that the financial implications weren't included in this to me was pretty alarming. I don't understand why some of the options that were pursued, and my understanding was for financial reasons not taken, why that was not further elaborated on, as it, to my knowledge, did not have anything to do with any formal legal arrangements that we couldn't discuss, since it was simply trying to find solutions for the crops. So I'm curious when we will get to see the financial implications associated with the destruction of the corn.
So I guess my question would be, do we have the statistics about what the cost would have been? And if not, can we bring that back?
Yes, through the chair. Yes, we did look at various financial implications, but I would refer to that, in fact, there are various confidentiality obligations associated with that in particular that the region is subject to.
If I may.
So is this something we could pursue in closed if we needed more information?
Yes, the answer, Chair, yes, that would be something we can discuss further in closed.
Thank you. Councillor Salonen?
Just a follow-up to that, Matthew, so I might need you there. I'm sorry. I wasn't referring to the financial implications associated with the negotiation with the landowner. I was referring to, for example, the biofuel, why that option was not pursued. And my understanding was it was a fiscal reason because it would in fact cost the municipality to remove. That to me has no legal bearing, unless I'm wrong, because that would be exploratory and in fact would provide more rationale as to why staff felt it was not a viable option. That's the information I was seeking.
Yeah, through the chair, it is in fact connected right now to active discussions that are going on. Again, subject to those confidentiality obligations. So also something that could be discussed in closed.
If I could just request that some of these things can go to closed for us to discuss.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. At least one of the delegations noted tonight a significant time lapse between the time at which the corn was plowed under and the time at which staff began or was seen performing further due diligence. I wonder if staff can speak to if there's validity in that and why that occurred.
Through the chair, due diligence on site commenced actually before the plowing happened. So there was various invasive studies that were underway at that point in time, and then various studies, such as archaeological, for example, require there's a number of variables involved in that process to complete the study, things like weather cycles, things like availability of indigenous monitors. There's a number of different, the condition of the soil. There's a number of different factors that go into that process from the point it commences to the point it completes. And that could vary in time.
A follow-up, if I may. So were there staff doing due diligence even though they were not seen in Wilmot between August and September?
Through the chair, I'll just echo my comment before. On-site investigations were happening before on-site investigations were happening before the site was plowed.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Foxton.
This is difficult. I think I had a speech last night at my council where I said, Canadians respect you first and you have to lose that respect. And I'm fear that we've lost your respect. And you asked for an apology. I do apologize. I am sorry for the way this whole thing is played out. We should have worked with respect, side by side, to deal with this situation, and it should have never come to this. And I think my colleagues feel exactly the same way. Although we have this arbitrary non-disclosure agreement over our heads, but we're not really sure we do have it. But I want you to know you matter. I want you to know we do care. We truly do care. And I don't know how we can change things or make it better, but maybe if we start to remember, as Canadians, we respect one another and pay you the respect you deserve. And I know you think it's just talk, and I can see your hand. And I understand that. You want to hate us, and I understand. But I want you to know I am truly sorry that we've come to this situation at this time. And only our actions going forward can help us to make it better. Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I certainly appreciate the comments from my colleague, Councillor Foxton. I find this whole thing very difficult with regards to the NDA. Is it still in effect? Because in my discussions with members of staff, that's my understanding. So I need to get a yes or no.
Fiona?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes.
Okay.
And can
so it's
I?
Still in effect. So we're put in a position, and I respect my colleague also, Councillor Deutschman, for bringing up a contrary view, which is, I think, very interesting. But we're in a situation here where we talk about negotiations, we talk about NDAs, we talk about consultations, but we can't get to the bottom of what's going on because we're handicapped by all these different, hindrances that have been put in our way to talk about the basic things that have happened here. And I find it very difficult. I certainly take the greatest exception to the MPP, Michael Harris, for accusing us of not being transparent, when in fact, I think he led the whole argument of a lack of transparency on his behalf. And I have a lot of difficulty with that. So we're sitting here with one hand tied behind our backs, where we can't get to the bottom and explain to people what's transpired here. We can't do it, and the report doesn't do it either, and I agree with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Chair Redmond, and my question was basically the same as Councillor Craig's. I think it's easy to say that because certain people publicly have disclosed some information that the NDA doesn't exist. But I think we better be very careful in how we interpret that. And in my opinion, and I appreciate Ms. McRae's response, that it does exist, and it has left us in a very, very difficult situation with a community of people who deservedly are upset, but I think we're equally upset that we can't be forthright with them in some of the information that we want to share. So I think, you know, from a council's perspective, we just can't assume that this doesn't exist, and we're going to not be careful with the information that we're going to share, because there's been a lot of time and energy, blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, invested in this, and we don't want to lose that opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is along the same lines. Well, what makes an NDA invalid if what happened didn't? I guess that would be my question to legal. And what leeway do we have with negotiations at this point? Can we take expropriation off the table? You know, what power do we have here as council?
Fiona?
Through you, Madam Chair, that would be something that we could bring back to council in closed session.
And I guess from my perspective, irrespective of what ministers of the Crown, several of them have said in public, our obligations for confidentiality, not only with other partners, but with landowners who we are actively negotiating in ongoing negotiations. It has always been the stand of this regional council that they would have fair and equitable negotiated outcomes with the landowners, and we stay committed to that. But I also want to point out that it isn't fair to saddle staff with this. This issue had full discussion at Regional Council. Staff have not acted outside of any of the parameters that Regional Council has given them. And again, these kinds of negotiations are complicated, and there are many parties who are part of this. So irrespective of what other levels of government or ministers have done, and I know, Councillor Craig, that you're passionate in your comments, but I don't know that it's particularly fair to talk about one of our local MPPs when they're not here to defend themselves. So they're all repeat interventions. I'll go back to Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I quote from a CBC article, "I'm surprised and I'm confused because from the very beginning of this project, we worked in lockstep with the province," Redmond said in a phone interview. I mean, how much more can we get into the fact that the province is part of this and the NDA doesn't apply anymore? The ministers confirmed they're funding this project. They confirmed that. That was their statement. You went on CBC and explained that we were working in lockstep. So let me take it to this report. Why, for example, could we not have more information about the multiple efforts to arrange for the completion of the technical work without disruption? What confidentiality agreement is being breached by providing more information with respect to that? I cannot see what confidentiality agreement is being breached with respect to that. And if there's something outside of an NDA, what is the other confidentiality agreement outside of closed committee? So why do we not have more information about multiple efforts to arrange for completion? That's my question.
Again, I'm going to suggest that if we want to have a full discussion of full disclosure because of confidential undertakings we've made with multiple parties, we can do that in closed. So we're dangerously close to crossing a line.
Well, I don't agree with your interpretation of that at all. So am I going to get an answer to that question tonight?
Do you want to go and close after council?
No, I want the answer here and open.
And your question is, why can't we talk about?
No, my question is, why wasn't there more information provided about multiple efforts and what were they, so we know, so that the community knows? That's my question. If it's your decision to say that I'm not going to allow that question and open, it's your ruling.
Matthew, is that something that you can address?
Through the chair, just for clarification, you're talking about efforts with regards to usage of the harvested corn crop?
No, I'll read the paragraph. It's on page 3 of 4 in the middle. It says, prior to the removal of the crop, the region made multiple efforts to arrange for the completion of the technical work without disruption before or after crops were planted or harvested, but all efforts were not viable. There should be more explanation with respect to what efforts were made and why were they not viable.
Through the chair, I'll defer to the chair's previous comments on confidentiality agreements and discussion in closed.
Well, so for clarification, what confidentiality agreement are you referring to?
So I don't know that this is germane to the report, so I am going to shut this down, Councillor Deutschmann.
Well, I'm going to challenge the chair.
All right. My ruling has been challenged that this is still germane to the report at hand. So are you moving a challenge of?
Yes.
Okay. Would somebody second that chair challenge? Yeah, Jan is. Are you seconding that challenge? Okay. So give us a moment and there will be a motion to challenge the ruling of the chair.
Well, I'm sorry, but Madam Chair, exactly what's being challenged here? Can you go through that again so we understand Councillor Deutschmann's objection?
I'm challenging the ruling of the chair not to allow my question to ask for particulars with respect to efforts made.
Okay.
And to have that answered in open session.
And just to be clear, staff has already said it's not what we cannot discuss this in open.
Well, don't agree with staff on that.
So as I understand it, Madam Chair, if we vote in favor, we are sustaining the chair. Am I correct?
No, if we vote in favor, we're doing the opposite.
Yes, is the chair, yes.
Oh, right.
So,
Yeah, the question for your vote will be, is the chair's ruling upheld? So if
All
you're
right, so
voting in the
yeah.
affirmative, you're voting in favor of the chair's ruling.
If you're in favor,
are we voting now?
if you vote no, it says it allows to go.
So colleagues, the chair's ruling stands.
Okay, so I have a second question, Madam Chair.
Absolutely, Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. I'd like to know, in the report, it talked about, in the same paragraph, the region also explored various uses for the premature crop, including speaking to multiple livestock feed producers and a biofuel company. Why do we not have more detailed information about that? And I would like more information about that. That surely cannot be subject to a confidentiality agreement.
Through the chair. Yes, so through the process when we were harvesting the crop, we did speak to farmers and also feed producers on the ability of them to use the crop that was harvested for feed. They looked at the crop and confirmed to us that it was in a premature state. We offered to essentially give it to a feed producer, and they would not take it. So we did go through that process of having that conversation. They turned us down. It was at that point, we then also went to look at alternative solutions. We went to a biofuel producer. They looked at it, and they did tell us that it was going to be a very significant cost for them to come and truck it away. Which at that point was not feasible. So those were the alternatives that we did explore even prior to going down the path of plowing the crop under.
Through you, Madam Chair, the question was who? Who was asked? Who's the biodiversity company? Who were the livestock feed producers?
So through the chair, I would request that be something that be shared and closed for the reason of a number of our technical consultants have experienced various harassing calls to their businesses and homes, and while they're on site. And I don't want to go ahead and name individuals or a local company without at least talking to them first and potentially putting them through what our other consultants are experiencing right now.
Madam Chair, I'm surprised by that explanation to suggest that that's something that should be done in closed. I don't think that's a valid reason for a closed discussion on an issue like this. It doesn't fall into employment. It doesn't fall into purchase of land. It doesn't fall into litigation. These are people that we asked, and the community wants to know what steps we took.
Yeah, I guess, Councillor Deutschmann, this may be shades of gray, but I buy and totally understand Matthew's reluctance to expose individuals. They're identifiable, and this is information that isn't new, and they were harassed, and they did get phone calls, and I'm not saying anybody in this chamber would ever have done that, but clearly some people did, and it was very upsetting for them. So because of that, identifying individuals by name or by company is not a prudent thing to do at this point.
Well, Madam Chair, there's a lot of issues that are upsetting for a lot of people in this room and the people around this horseshoe. I mean, this is, I'm just surprised by that as an explanation to keep that information from the community. I'm very disappointed with your decision on that, Madam Chair.
I'm going to let Will weigh in here.
Sorry, just on a point of clarification with respect to a closed session meeting with the Municipal Act, in this case, Section 239 2B, personal matters about an identifiable individual would be something that would be would meet the criteria to go in closed session. So just clarifying that for the record.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through the chair to Matthew. Matthew, would it be fair to say that this council did not know about the plowing under of the corn till after the fact? In fact, we didn't hear it from staff. Where did we hear it from? Was it on the press or something? I know that emails went around and none of us knew about this. Would that be fair to say that it did not, council did not know? We're completely unaware?
Do you want to?
Okay, I'll take through you, Chair. I'm happy to take the question. So council was aware of the requirements of due diligence, however, and this is one of the elements that we added into the report. I think we provided more details on what this due diligence amounted to in order to be more transparent. So again, council had been aware that due diligence was ongoing and required under some specific timelines, but the exact contents of the specific details about the nature of the due diligence and its timing was not shared with council, as it's part of kind of operational matters. Yeah.
I may dispute that because I only knew that there was a talk about purchases of land. That's as far as any of the information I received. Any due diligence after the purchase of land, that would fall under, but all I knew about was the purchase of land, and I see my colleagues shaking their heads in confirmation. So we did not know, and I'm sorry we did not know. And if we had had the dialogue, maybe we could have found a better solution, or maybe not. But again, it's not only respect for this group here, but also for council, that we do be made aware, and I believe I stated that previously, Madam Chair, that we do need full knowledge. Thank you.
Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. Mine was actually along the lines of what Councillor Foxton just raised, and it was more so I wanted to clarify a statement that you had made, Chair, when you said that Council was fully aware of everything in regards to this process, and I believe you were speaking in broader strokes about the whole land assembly. However, the whole reason I even brought this motion forward was because I was not informed through my avenues of being mayor or councillor about the corn being destroyed. In fact, I found out from Adam Van Burkite calling me asking what on earth was happening, and it was rather embarrassing sitting as someone on this council.
Yes, Councillor Salonen, I would say it was in broad strokes, and I would also underscore that due diligence to a lot of us sounds like a paper exercise. And this is not a paper exercise. And again, there were parameters that were set in respect to all the parties involved in the purchase of several pieces of land in an assembly this size. So yes, it was a much broader comment. Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I come back to my comments about how handicapped or handcuffed we are with regards to this whole discussion and trying to in some way assure the public that we were trying to operate in the best interests in terms of this assembly. However, you cautioned me about criticizing MPP Harris, but he did not invite me to the news conference where he accused me and all regional council of not being transparent. So I think I have every right to come back and say what I've said. Thank you. I
appreciate your take on that. I guess I would just say that I find that if you tread the high road, there's a lot less traffic on it. Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you. I just want to say that I don't agree with the clerk's interpretation of identifiable person, as it's more particular to staff and committee members of the municipality. Identifiable person could be anybody within the entire region of Waterloo, which is 650,000 people. And I don't agree that that is the correct interpretation of that. I'm going to move that this report be sent back to staff and that we receive more particulars about the issues that we've raised here today, and that that report be brought back to open council.
So I appreciate the spirit within which you're suggesting that, but it seems very non-specific. And I say that at my peril because maybe we want it to be non-specific. Can you talk specifically to the things that you would hope would come back in an addendum report or another report?
Well, any area within this report where they said they've spoken to people, anything that's not specific, to be specific. I mean, I could take the time and spend the time and go through all the items in
We've got all night, Councillor Deutschman.
Fine, I'll do that.
Can I reflect to say that if this was to go back to staff, one of the things that I've heard from other councillors is maybe more financial attribution to what it was to send it to have it cut down, to send it to biofuel, those kinds of details. Is that what you're looking for?
Well, who was the biofuel company, for example, that was asked about it? Who were the farmers that were asked about it? For example, who were the farmers that came? And what did we pay for them to do the work that they did? That's not subject to any confidentiality agreement. That should be for the people to hear.
Well, we're going around this rabbit hole again, because I would tell you that if somebody approached me and I said, no, I am farmer X and I don't want to do Y, why would I think that that would show up in a public document?
Well, why would you not?
Because it's an interaction that's between somebody who approached me, not necessarily the region. I know that we worked very closely with the Township of Wilmot staff.
Did the parties have a discussion to say, don't disclose my name? Is staff going to say, we talked to some people and they said, don't disclose our name? Did we sign NDA agreements with these individuals? No.
Do you know what, Councillor Deutschman, sadly, we're not all lawyers either. So I would say that a lot of this was dealt with through personal channels. So I'm going to ask a council, do we want more detail to come back in a subsequent report? I'm seeing yes and no. Do you want to move a motion, Councillor Deutschman?
Yeah, I did move a motion. And Councillor Salonen seconded it.
Are you seconding? Okay. Councillor Erb, you're next on the line.
I'm not speaking to the motion.
We'll come back.
To me? Okay.
Can I speak to the motion?
Councillor Salonen, you want to speak to it?
Yes. Slash, just looking if we could add clarity of, I mean, if I'm understanding what you want to get to, while still appreciating some of the information that cannot be shared and open. Looking for more detail when it comes to date, times, and companies that were contacted, if you're open to that, including financial implications of considered options, if you're open to that, Councillor Deutschman.
Well, I mean, Madam Chair invited me to go through that list and I was going to do that, but then she stopped me. So I can go back and do that if you wish.
So I have two other speakers on the list, but I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break, and perhaps the mover and the seconder can discuss what they would like to propose to council to come back in a subsequent report. But I'm going to go to Mr. Getsky first.
No, through you, Chair, so just a reminder that we'll go back to legal to kind of unpack our specific obligations with respect to confidentiality, but we'll evidently the information that the additional detailed information that we can provide will have to be examined under that lens. So we'll follow council's direction, but we'll also apply that legal lens to make sure that we're not disclosing any information that's subject to confidentiality.
So we'll take a 5-minute break.
They said the crop was not mature enough.
So colleagues, we're going to have to ask Councillor Deutschmann to withdraw his previous motion, and then we will put forward this motion.
Thank you. I so withdraw.
And Councillor Salonen, you're agreeable to that? Would you now like to move this motion, Councillor Deutschmann?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Clerk.
It's coming up on a screen near you soon.
Yeah, so do you want me to read it or?
Yes, please.
Okay. That the report, moved by Councillor Deutschmann, seconded by Councillor Salonen. Okay, it just doesn't say there. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I know. I'm starting. I added that. Now, that the report PDL ECD 24-007 Land Assembly due diligence impacts be sent back to staff, and that staff be directed to provide more detailed information, including but not limited to what multiple efforts were made to arrange for the completion of the technical work, what uses were explored for the premature crop, and how many, and the location of livestock feed producers and biofuel company were contacted. And just to clarify, that should say in the name of the biofuel company that was contacted, just for clarification. The reasons why the uses were rejected, just to change the grammar on that one. Yeah, so the reasons why the uses were rejected, that's on the next line. Sorry, yeah. The reasons why the uses were rejected, and then just take out the uses. There you go. Thank you. All right. Who removed the crops and at what price? What confidentiality agreements are referred to other than the NDA agreement? Whether vendors of the land were consulted with respect to removal of the crops, and that this be brought back to open session, and further that a legal opinion be brought to closed session as to whether the NDA agreement is still valid.
Okay, I'm going to ask Matthew Getsky to speak to this.
Just for clarification, so whatever information we bring back to open session will continue to be subject to our confidentiality obligations. So,
well, okay, why don't we start with this then? I guess if you're saying that, then we need to have, I guess, first a discussion about what these confidentiality obligations are that you keep referring to, that staff keeps referring to. And maybe what we need to do is deal with that issue first before we deal with this motion then. I mean, it seems like we're running into a bit of a roadblock on this issue called confidentiality agreements.
So, Councillor Deutschmann, we can certainly do that. We'll have to recess and go into closed if we're going to do that before we deal with this motion.
Yeah, actually, just to clarify, I'm not asking that we go into closed tonight to have an answer to that question. What I'm asking is that legal provides us, I'm flipping it around. So what I'm saying is legal provides us with an answer to this question about confidentiality agreements and NDA agreement, and pending the discussion about that, then I would bring back the first part of that motion, because clearly staff is concerned, and I appreciate that. As Madam Chair said, not everyone's a lawyer, so
thank you.
But I appreciate that, and maybe we can hear then from council, who might even obtain outside counsel to give us an answer to this question, whether the NDA agreement still applies. And what are these other confidentiality agreements that are referred to in the plural by staff here tonight?
Thank you, Councillor Deutschmann.
So that could be, sorry, Madam Chair, that would be a direction to council, just to keep it simple, and then
Okay.
I'll deal with the motion another day.
So, Councillor Salonen, do you want to speak to it as a seconder?
I'm fine with that approach being direction. So I guess my question would, from a technical process, be this report, since it's technically to be received for information tonight, would it be deferring pending getting legal counsel? So then we can do the motion at the appropriate time?
Yeah, sorry. Okay, just for clarification then, if there's direction right now for staff to come back with the legal questions answered, that would be done and closed at a meeting to be determined by council or staff on how long it would take to get those answers. Following that discussion, like if you want this on October 8th at committee, or if you want it on October 23rd is our council meeting, the 23rd. So if we brought this back to a closed meeting of council at October 23rd, legal answers the questions, council has a discussion and closed, we would then come out of closed, and then pending the discussion and closed, the additional pieces of this motion that you're talking about right now could then be moved, seconded, and discussed by council.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think a big sticking point here is the actions of the province in regards to all of this has thrown a spanner in the wheel, has caused a disruption. Staff believes one thing, some members of council believe a different thing, and I think we need some clarity on this issue as a result of the action of the province in regards to agreements.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to the speakers. Councillor Salonen, do you want to comment?
I was just going to say, then I'd be willing to move to defer this report to the October, whatever date we said, 23rd.
So you're moving to defer this motion?
The report, because the report is to receive for information. Essentially, tonight, I do not want this received for information because there's still a conversation to be had.
Okay. So the motion on the floor, in essence, defers the report that's before us.
Okay, that's fine.
So we're going to defer this motion and deal with it on October 23rd. And the report that received for information, in essence, is part of this deferral. We're all clear? Okay. About this, Councillor Shantz?
Just about this, the process and what's coming back on October 23rd, because we also talked about going into close to get some direction, but the motion is asking for additional information to be in open. So do we need that closed discussion a couple of weeks before so that we can get the report with, no?
I think Councillor Deutschman's going to clarify.
Yeah, just to clarify, and what Councillor Shantz said is the reason why I did what I did. So we're going to get an opinion on the NDA first. Staff's not going to do the report until we do that part. And then they can't do the report till our motion is discussed and whether it's passed or not. If the motion is passed for the other information, which would only happen after we have the NDA discussion and the confidentiality agreement discussion, then staff would do that work. But they're not going to be doing any work until the NDA issue and confidentiality agreements issue is resolved for us.
Which we're not doing for a month.
Yeah, it'll be a couple months. Yeah.
Councillor Shantz, that's clear? Thank you, Councillor Deutschman. So I have a list of people. Councillor Erb, do you want to speak to this motion, or is, okay. Councillor Hunick.
I'm going to hold my question until we have the NDA clarification. Thank you.
I didn't.
I'm going to hold my question until the NDA is clarified.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor James, is it on the motion before us?
Well, it was on the motion through you, Chair.
I'm going to come back to everybody after this motion, so if you'd rather speak sort of more generally, I'll keep you on the list.
Okay, perfect.
And Councillor Craig.
This is speaking to the aspect of the legal aspects of the NDA. Can I ask questions about that?
Sure.
I mean, if the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister Fideli and MPP Harris can walk outside the agreement, I want to know why members of council can't do the same thing. And I want that to come back. And is there any kind of repercussions for the minister or for members of council if in fact we're outside the agreement. And I think we need to know that. I'm really just dumbfounded by this whole scenario here about the fact that we're totally handcuffed in this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Craig, and that will be part of the discussion that
All
comes
right.
back on the 23rd.
Thank you.
So I have a list of speakers, but they don't want to speak to the motion before us. I see no more speakers, so I would ask you to, it's been moved and seconded, so please.
I seconded the deferral.
So please use your e-scribe to vote. Are we all clear on what we're voting on? It's the same motion, and it will come back on October 23rd. So what we are now voting on is a deferral for this to come back on this October 23rd, pending a legal opinion being received regarding the validity of the NDA and other confidentiality agreements. You're welcome. Please use your e-scribe. Colleagues, that is carried. I am now going to go back to my speakers list and yet again offer Councillor Erb the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Part of the discussion this evening has been who knew what, who's done what related to staff and to council members. And I think it's pretty important to, for those in the audience and those who may be listening online, that if council members feel like they've had one hand tied behind their backs, staff have been in much more of an awkward position and don't have the liberty of defending themselves publicly like we do. And I don't want us to leave this council meeting thinking that staff have made some errors on our behalf, because at the end of the day, in our governance model, the accountability is with the 16 people around this table and nobody else. And that's where the buck stops. And so if there's any blame, it comes here and not to our staff, who are some of the best municipal workers in the province. Delegations have told us tonight about how well the region is respected around the province, and that's because of our staff. And we have no right in casting any blame towards them in what has happened. They have been working under very, very difficult circumstances. And if anybody is to blame, we're the elected ones. We're the ones that should be taking it.
I appreciate that, Councillor Erb. I couldn't agree with you more. And I have to say we've been very close to crossing a couple lines in my view, and one of them is having some staff stand up there and have to sort of take the brunt of what is a very difficult decision, a very difficult process, and I really would commend you for pointing out that the people around this horseshoe are the ones where the buck stops. Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair Redmond. I also want to tell those who've come and spoken today in the past few weeks, you know, I think we see you and we hear you, and this is one of those situations where it is unfortunately messy, potentially more messier than it should be. I also want to speak, Councillor Erb, you spoke to what I was going to mention, and is, you know, we talk often about respect, and we also need to recognize that there are staff here that are doing a job that, you know, most of the times directed by council, and we need to ensure that while we may have a difference of opinion about things, we need to be respectful and very mindful of those who are doing the public service and bearing the brunt. And, you know, the realities are we are the elected officials. There are situations that happen, and, you know, it is us that are the accountable ones, and being mindful of that throughout, because without our public servants and our staff, there are a lot of services that would not get done around this region and throughout various municipalities. And I think being mindful of that as this as everything unfolds is something we collectively need to be holding a front and center, along with how we coexist with each other within this region. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. I'm going to go back to Councillor Hunick. Was your question about the legal opinion, have you made the intervention that you were in the queue to make?
I said I would hold my question until we have a direction from legal, so I'm good for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. So just to follow up, yeah, ultimate responsibility is the members around this horseshoe, but let's remember the position that we have. We are a balance between working with staff and working with the public. The public is here seeking information. Staff has a lot of that information that we don't have. So the exercise tonight was us seeking that additional information so that we can share it with the community. And to me, that is an additional aspect of respect, is making sure that we get to the community all the information that they deserve to have. And sometimes that requires some clarification on what staff feels they're compelled by or tied by. And in fact, what we're doing is trying to ease staff's concerns about confidentiality agreements and the concerns they have about saying something that could mess things up. And that's why we're taking the steps that we're taking to get better clarity, and that's helping staff and helping the community. Thank you.
Colleagues, we're now going to go back to item 7 on our agenda, minutes of previous meetings, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from meetings. They're listed on your agenda, 7.1 to 7.11. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Salonen. Please use your e-scribe to vote.
Mine didn't come up. Oh, there it comes.
Councillor Deutschmann, have you voted? Oh. Thank you. That is carried, colleagues. The next item is 8.1, information package, September 18th, 2024. This package of communications was distributed electronically. There's also correspondence from Janet and Don Worthington as part of that package. I would now entertain a motion to go into the Committee of the Whole to consider reports. If I could have a mover. We have a Councillor Hunick, seconded by Councillor Williams. Please use your e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. The committee reports, the first one is 10.1.1, Administration and Finance Committee Summary, September the 10th, 2024. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your e-scribe buttons to vote. That is carried, colleagues. The next agenda item is 10.1.2, Community and Health Services Summary, September 10th, 2024. If I could have a mover and a seconder, there are several motions captured in this. Moved by Councillor Erb, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. The next item is 10.1.3, Sustainability, Infrastructure and Development Committee Summary, September 10th, 2024. If I could have a mover. Councillor Foxton. Councillor McCabe, please use your e-scribe to vote.
Chair Redmond,
Councillor Hunick.
can I ask a question about 10.1.4 before we vote on it?
That vote is carried. You may now ask a question about 10.1.4. This is the closed committee summary of September 10th, 2024.
Oh, maybe I have the number wrong. Sorry, I wanted to ask the question regarding the Kissing Bridge. Maybe the number is wrong. Oh.
It's on 11.3.
It hasn't come up yet. I will flag it before it comes up. Councillor Hunick?
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Councillor Hunick, thank you for flagging it. I'll raise it before we deal with it, okay?
Okay, sorry, my numbers are mixed. Good, all good.
It's nice to know that everyone's paying attention. This is the next agenda item is the closed committee summary, September the 10th, 2024. If I could have a mover. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Hunick. Please vote, and this is that the Regional Municipality of Waterloo amend the 2024 to 2033 capital program to add $250,000 to project 05549, Franklin Boulevard, Myers Road, to Highway 401, funded from the Transport Capital Reserve. Colleagues, that is carried. Next, we have a Board of Health update, and I would call on Dr. Wong, Commissioner of Public Health and Paramedic Services, to provide a verbal update, which was received for information. Welcome, Dr. Wong.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Council. So I would like to provide you an update about the respiratory illness season as we move into the cooler months. Public Health has been collaborating closely with other health system partners to prepare for the upcoming respiratory and enteric illness season. Similar to neighboring health units, Public Health recently received confirmation of our first local cases of influenza. We expect to see sporadic cases early in the fall with increased activity as the weather cools, peaking in December or January. The updated flu and COVID vaccines will be available in early October for high-risk persons, including those in long-term care, retirement homes, and other congregate care settings. We expect the vaccines to be available for all persons in late October. Vaccines will be available at pharmacies, community health care providers, and Public Health will also hold clinics for those who cannot be easily accommodated through primary care or pharmacy. I also wanted to mention that we are seeing an increase in pertussis, also known as whooping cough, across Ontario as well as Waterloo region. We tend to see cyclical increases of pertussis every few years. Pertussis is a kind of bacteria that is spread through respiratory droplets. When an infected person coughs or sneezes, symptoms may initially be similar to a cold or flu, but pertussis can progress to prolonged coughing episodes, often associated with a distinct cough known as whooping cough. Most persons who are infected will recover, but pertussis can be particularly severe in infants under the age of 12 months. Public Health recommends that persons ensure that their pertussis vaccine is up to date. In Ontario, the vaccine series is started in infancy with booster doses in adolescence and adulthood. And pregnant women may receive the vaccine between 27 and 32 weeks of pregnancy to provide the best protection for their infant. Finally, in recent years, we have seen an increase in Group A streptococcal infections during the cooler months. Group A streptococcus is a type of bacteria that is sometimes found in the nose and throat without causing infection. It can lead to strep throat, scarlet fever, and impetigo. Less commonly, this bacteria can cause more serious illness if it enters the blood, lungs, or other sterile sites, in which case it becomes known as invasive Group A streptococcal infection. There is no specific vaccine for invasive Group A streptococcal infection, but it can be treated with antibiotics. Early symptoms depend on where the infection occurs, but often involves fever, localized pain, headache, or rash that becomes increasingly severe. Invasive Group A streptococcus infection can be a very serious and sometimes life-threatening infection that requires prompt medical care. In closing, Public Health wishes to remind our residents about some measures they can take to prevent the spread of respiratory illnesses, including staying up to date with vaccines for which you are eligible, staying at home if you are sick, washing hands thoroughly and often, covering your nose and mouth with a tissue when you cough or sneeze, cleaning and disinfecting high-touch surfaces and shared items, and residents can also add a layer of protection by wearing a well-fitting mask, such as in crowded, poorly ventilated spaces. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. I have some questions. Councillor Deutschman, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Edmund. Dr. Wong, I wanted to ask you, it's not related to this, but recently there was a community drug alert from RIDS talking about high-potency fentanyl circulating within the community, number of deaths, et cetera. And it's noted that the CTS and drug checking is open at 150 Duke Street West. So my question is, when the Heart Hub is set up and we lose the CTS, will the Heart Hub be providing drug checking services?
No, the drug checking services were a pilot that was funded for a limited time by the federal government for 11 sites across the country, and we were one of those sites. So my understanding is that that pilot and its funding are coming to a close. So it wouldn't, it's a federal pilot on a limited basis, time-limited basis, and so it's not associated with the Heart Hub model.
So the follow-up question then, Madam Chair, I'm presuming that it's been effective and a valuable service in the community. Is there any discussions with the federal government about continuing to provide that service in our community?
Yeah, there has been advocacy regarding this in general across the province, and there's been no indication that the federal government will be changing direction on sunsetting this pilot.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So the, what is it, A for Staphylococcus, are we putting that information out on what parents should be looking for?
Yes, these are general, these are part of the general pieces of information that we will put out. It doesn't really have very specific symptoms that only are part of that infection. Really, what parents need to know is when they feel concerned because their child isn't getting better as expected, for instance, or they're getting worse, after seeing a healthcare provider, that they should trust their gut and, if needed, go back and consult. But for sure, we can definitely, I can make sure that we continue to put out information to the public. I know that we also keep our physicians updated about this, because the important thing really is for physicians to be alert that, we are seeing increased cases, and to be reminded, what are the most common symptoms and what they should be doing if they see those symptoms. So we have been doing that for sure.
So if you can share those releases with me, and I'll have my staff at the township also send them out.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Wong, I just want to pick up on something that Councillor Deutschman touched on, and it may not be a fair question to ask you, but if we were one of the 11 pilot projects, we must have data that shows that testing drugs has saved lives. And I'm wondering, given that the province seems to be moving in another way and losing a CTS, is it worth us amping up our advocacy to the federal government to say that we would like this pilot to continue? Was it permission and funding, or what was the structure of the program?
Yeah, my understanding is really it was a pilot to assess what, the usefulness, the potential benefits of this type of checking. So, my understanding is that the federal government are looking at the results, but they have provided no indication that they are planning to continue the funding or, to transition it to some kind of maybe permanent service that could remain in those 11 pilot sites or be expanded. So, yeah, I think for me, certainly we've heard from our CTS service provider, Sanguine, and we've heard from the clients who use the CTS site that, it's had positive results for its clients. So what I think we don't necessarily have at this time is what is Health Canada's assessment of the pilot results from their 11 sites over this period of time that they've had this pilot, and what are they planning to do as a policy decision about this type of service going forward. So, and unfortunately, that is not, like the testing per se is not something that, locally we would have expertise in. It's quite specialized at this time. So, so that's the status, I would say.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And if you get any information, I think everybody around this horse show will be very interested to hear what Health Canada has deemed as a result of that program.
Yes, we can certainly inquire again of Health Canada, what their status is, what the status is of this program, and we'll do that and inform council.
Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you, Chair. Your question was my third question, so I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, I think it would be helpful for us to maybe get some information back, like when is this program ending? And it may very well be that just listening to Dr. Wong, that if the CTS closes, we may not have the expertise or the services able to run a testing site. So maybe some information about that, if it's even feasible. I think some advocacy on our part might be beneficial, just because of the utility and usefulness of having that information to provide to the community, because, the alert outlines the colors of the drugs to be aware of, et cetera, and it's just a shame the direction that things are going. But that's my own personal opinion. I apologize. Thank you very much.
I don't think that was on. I just wanted to say noted. Thank you. Will do.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Next agenda item was Conestoga Meats woodlot remover permit referred from licensing and hearing. And I would note that Conestoga Meats woodlot removal permit application was referred to this committee and withdrawn. So moving on, the next agenda item is a verbal update, Kissing Bridge Trailway G2G update. And Councillor Hunick, you wanted to make an intervention. Do you want to hear from Commissioner Rose first, or would you rather ask your question?
I would love to hear from Commissioner Rose first. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Commissioner Rose, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just getting my notes up. 1 second. On September 10th, 2024, Regional Council directed staff to evaluate the feasibility of applying to the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund offered by the Province of Ontario for funding to support the design and construction of the proposed pedestrian bridge on the Kissing Bridge Trail on the G2G portion. The grant application intake began in August 2024 and is ongoing until all funding has been allocated without a specific end date. As the window for applications may soon be closing, and considering that a business case would need to be prepared as part of the submission, time is of the essence if the region wishes to pursue this funding. The current total estimated cost for the bridge structure is $8 million. There are multiple parties with different types of involvement in this matter. So prior to applying for the funding, the region would require written approval of the province as landlord according to the lease between the province, the region, and the County of Wellington to build the bridge. So that's the first thing we would have to do, is ask the province for permission to build the bridge. And then we would also need to know whether the province would want Wellington County to be a co-applicant on the grant application, because the County of Wellington is a co-tenant with the region on the lease. So we would have to look at that first. In order to go forward with the grant application, we would need a resolution from council. We would need an agreement between the region and Wellington County, so the county bears no responsibility for the bridge. We would need agreements between the region and Wellesley Township and the community funding group with respect to the funding that they have allocated for this project to come to the region. We would also need to advance funding for the construction in 24-25 by delaying other already scheduled projects in the transportation capital plan, or we can allocate funding from the transportation reserve. And we would also need an FTE in design and construction to manage the project. So if the province's approval as landlord is received to construct the bridge pursuant to the lease, the region with the county as co-applicant, if that is what is required, would be eligible to apply for this grant with a provincial contribution of up to 50% of program expenses available to municipalities. The maximum funding available is $10 million, and approved projects must be completed with all eligible project expenses incurred no later than March 31st, 2027. This is pretty common with grant programs, that we have to finish by a certain date. So based on current estimates, if successful in obtaining the provincial contribution through the grant, the region would be responsible for covering costs in the range of $4 million. If funding agreements can be reached with Wellesley Township and the community funding group, the region's share of costs would be approximately $500,000. And I already mentioned about council direction to advance the construction timing of this project. So just to reiterate, we've estimated the project at $8 million. If we get the grant funding for $4 million, we're left with another $4 million. We can get $3.5 million that's been identified through Wellesley Township and the community funding, which would leave $500,000 from the region. If we don't get the grant, the construction of the project is still $8 million, with $3.5 million coming from Wellesley and the community funding group. That would leave the region having to pay $4 million for the project. So I just wanted to give you both scenarios, if we got the grant and if we didn't get the grant, as that will impact, I'm sure, council's decision on this. So staff have reviewed the grant program requirements, and we've determined that this would be a suitable funding opportunity to pursue, subject to addressing all of the other things that I've already articulated. Assuming the region is successful in securing funds through the grant, should the project extend beyond the conditional March 31st, 2027 completion deadline, the region would then be at risk of losing some or all of the provincial funding, which I mentioned earlier. And under ideal circumstances, staff believe that the March 31st, 2027 final delivery target may be achievable. In past experiences, the review process on provincial or federal funding applications has taken anywhere from 6 to 12 months. If the grant review process is that lengthy, initiating the EA process after the funding announcement would make the March 31st, 2027 deadline difficult. And also, we can't start the EA process prior to receiving the grant funding because any expenditures on the project prior to confirmation of the successful application under the grant would not be eligible for funding. So bottom line is, yes, we can apply for the grant funding once we get permission from the province to build the bridge, and we get a council resolution to apply for the grant funding.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I'm going to go to Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. Commissioner Rose, I would love to see this accessible pedestrian trail move forward. I think it would be a great asset to the region. You mentioned that timelines are sensitive and it's possible that we will get funding for the grant, which I think is great. But regardless of that, we would still be on the hook for $500,000. And so, and you mentioned in your report that this would require deferral of other projects or delaying of other projects that are currently on the list. Is it possible, is it within your purview and capacity to get an idea of which projects would be deferred, delayed, if council approved this one? Before we vote on it.
Sure. So through the chair to Councillor Hunick, that would be something that we would be asking the transportation department to look at, is which projects would be best to advise council we would need to defer or delay in order to put this project forward. But I also mentioned that there is also the opportunity to allocate funding from the Transportation Capital Reserve for this project and not delay other projects.
Okay.
We will, however, need an FTE to support this project work. So right now, my staff in design and construction are fully allocated to all projects with respect to the Transportation Capital Plan.
Thank you for that perspective.
Thank you. Councillor Nowak.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Excuse me. My voice isn't so good right now. It's a little disappointing. I thought maybe you would have been a little further ahead by now, but have you had any discussion with the province? Any preliminary discussion with the province yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Nowak, I believe there has been some discussion with the province, but not like more for exploratory about the grant itself, that rather than asking permission, because we wanted to bring this information back to council first.
Okay, and if I may, through the chair, as far as the funding is concerned, I think once the individuals who had raised the $4 million or $3.5 million have indicated once they know for sure that this is going to go forward, that the region is going to move forward with this, they will start some fundraising on their own. So there's a good opportunity for more fundraising to come yet. So that $500,000 may not be needed if the fundraising, and they're a pretty aggressive group when it comes to fundraising. So I think that's something to keep in mind. The motion that was passed by council suggested not a FTE. It suggested that you hire a consultant to do the work on this because you didn't have the staff, or you felt that you didn't have the staff to to take over this work. I'm wondering if that's not a possibility anymore. I mean, that was a motion that was passed by council.
So through the chair to Councillor Nowak, we would be hiring a consulting company and a contractor for this work. However, we still need staff oversight of the contract and the consultant, just for, answering questions, administrative work, that kind of thing. So that would be part of the work that FTE would do. And it could be a contract FTE just for this project alone. But we need someone to, create the procurement documents, do the evaluation, monitor the work, liaise with other areas in the region, liaise with township staff, that kind of thing. So it's not as easy as just hiring a consultant or a contractor to do work. You have to monitor what they're doing and and provide guidance.
Okay, well, I must admit I'm a little disappointed. I thought we would have been a little further ahead with this. But I'm just not sure. Have you have met with the CAO, the township CAO, and the other principals that were involved with the initial application or the initial request?
Yeah, so
to bring them up to speed on where you're at right now?
Yes, so through the chair to Councillor Nowak, we did meet with them before the August report. Right, because we're in September now. Yeah, sorry, I forgot what month I was in. We did meet with them before the August report. We have a meeting with them scheduled in the middle of October to speak to talk to them about what we have learned so far about the grant process. By that time, we will have contacted the province to find out under the lease if we can proceed with this project in the first place, and then we will be speaking with the CAO of Wellesley Township and the G2G group prior to the November report going forward.
So just for my own clarity, just to be clear, the holdup right now is that you don't have permission from the province.
Correct.
Okay.
So, Councillor Nowak, I just want to point out that we've already passed the committee reports, and there will be a report on Sustainability, Infrastructure and Development Committee coming on November the 5th to outline the cost breakdowns and the time allocations of this project. So this was just a provincial update.
Okay. Now, I just wanted to get some clarification on a few things. I'm sorry I can't speak too well.
You should give up singing that karaoke, Councillor Nowak.
Yeah, I should do something different.
Thank you very much for that, Commissioner Rose. The next agenda item is motion for Committee of the Whole to rise and Council to resume. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. I would now consider a motion to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Erb, seconded by Councillor James. Please use your e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. We're now into motions of notice that were provided. I will go to Councillor McCabe. I would also notice that I know that you know this topic intimately. I know you have a lovely T-shirt. We're really hoping you're not going to read the whole notice of motion. So I will turn the floor over to you, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Chair. And no, I'll just make some brief remarks. Just to explain why, the thinking behind why bringing this motion here. I did bring it to City of Waterloo Council on Monday, and it was passed there as well. But to start, I did want to thank the people and the organizations in Waterloo and across Waterloo region who are on the front lines of this humanitarian crisis that communities across Ontario and Canada continue to experience. This, the homelessness and housing and mental health addiction crisis is a live, ongoing, and complex issue for towns, large cities, and mid-sized cities. And the intent of the motion is to bring attention to the Solve the Crisis campaign that was launched a month ago, approximately, by the Ontario Big City Mayors with the support of the mayors and regional chairs of Ontario. And we know that we've had numerous discussions about the amount of funding that the region of Waterloo, particularly through our public health and our housing divisions, continue to invest to address the need for more supportive housing, more deeply affordable housing, and affordable housing across our communities. And locally, we know that area municipalities, including their BIAs, have also budgeted staff time and resources across a number of divisions to help those experiencing homelessness and addiction in our cities. And quite frankly, this is funding that should be coming from the provincial and the federal governments in order to adequately address these challenges. So I do include references to the amount of funding and the staff time that the region and local municipalities continue to spend for a couple of reasons. The first one is because people need to know, residents need to know where and how their property tax dollars are spent. And also to reiterate that municipalities need funding support from both the federal and the provincial governments. And we need the legislative framework that will allow us to collectively work to solve the crisis. And we know that the federal government and the provincial government have both provided some funding, and we of course appreciate that. How often it is too often one time, short term, and it's certainly not the quantity that's enough to address the root causes of this complex social issue. And we know, of course, as well that the province recently announced $370 million over 4 years to create 19 homelessness and addiction recovery treatment hubs with 375 supportive housing beds. And again, of course, we appreciate this initiative. However, we know in Waterloo region and other municipalities know that the demand, particularly for supportive housing, is so great that we could probably use nearly that entire 375 supportive housing beds just in Waterloo region alone. So I wanted to bring this motion here tonight to encourage everyone in the Chamber, Council, and anyone listening, and certainly residents across our region, to take a few minutes to go to the website, solvethecrisis.ca, read some more information about this, and write to your MPs and MPPs. There's a simple process online to do that, and let them know that this change is needed, and it's needed now. So thank you for listening, and
Councillor McCabe, do you have a seconder?
Oh, yes, I do. Councillor James.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Okay, we have the motion before us. Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Councillor McCabe, for bringing this forward. I think all of us who share the concern for more affordable housing in our community have been in contact with many, many organizations, and they've been in contact with us who want to do something, and it's the dollars that are getting in the way of it happening. And all of Council received an email around this issue a couple of weeks ago from Indwell. And I just want to remind Council of what was said. They're saying, we have a solution to homelessness. We're already providing affordable housing that includes mental health, addictions, and other supports, and wraparound services for the tenant. This is Indwell alone in southwestern Ontario. We have 7 projects with 264 units of supportive housing that are shovel-ready, and 7 other projects with 392 units of supportive housing on which we can break ground in the next year. All we need is government funding. That's a total of 656 supportive housing units that are ready to be developed if we could get funding from the provincial government. So the more advocacy we can do for this, there's a significant need for it, but we have the community partners that are prepared to do it, and all we need is a buy-in from the upper levels of government.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask everybody to use your e-scribe to vote on the motion before us. Colleagues, that is carried. We'll be holding a meeting next week to look at nominations for the Jack Young Civic Award. The Jack Young Award is presented to a person in Waterloo Region who best exemplifies the high standards of political and civic life exhibited by Jack A. Young, the first chair of the Regional Municipality of Waterloo, during his years of public service. It is a uniquely Region of Waterloo Award that celebrates and recognizes the contributions of people directly connected to regional government and its programs and services and/or regionally created and/or administrated organizations. The deadline to nominate someone for this award is this Friday, so be sure to nominate those deserving. The nomination form is available on the website, or you can contact the regional clerk for more information. This would be done in closed session once the nominations have been gathered, because again, they are identifiable individuals. So I'm wondering if I could have a mover and a seconder for this motion. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Craig. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Councillor Williams, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just getting in line for questions for the next part that's not to do with this.
Okay. So Councillor Williams has a question. Councillor Craig, do you also have a question?
Other business, Madam Chair, if I may.
Okay, go ahead with other business.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if the clerk can get in touch with the Deputy Davis at Regional Police to discuss a possible bylaw dealing with scrap metal that's being stolen across the region and sold. And I know that in other municipalities, there are bylaws about how those transactions can be monitored to slow and mitigate the theft of copper, plaques, everything else. So I'm just asking if the clerk can get in touch, come back to us with a possible bylaw that we could pass in the region of Waterloo.
That is duly noted. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Oh, thank you, through you, Chair. So my question was for Commissioner Spooner, and we had discussed the air truck ban. I also have been talking with Councillor Foxton, and a lot of the residents are wondering what's been happening. There's a lot going on right now. There's been a lot of construction. So if you could provide a verbal update, it was anticipated for the summer, but we'll take it now. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Chair, and thank you for the question, Councillor Williams. And this item does remain on our Sustainability, Infrastructure and Development Committee tracking list, so happy to provide an update. Just a reminder of the ask, this is a two-step. The first is to talk about interim measures in air, such as posting signage warnings for oversized vehicles and the limitations of using Swan, Stanley, and Northumberland, with the eventual goal of a truck ban through air. So the interim measures is the piece I know in immediate, and the full truck ban is the piece that we're working on. So we've met multiple times with township staff, which is the right approach. We've got a shared road network in this area. We also will at some point need to engage Brant and Oxford counties as we have shared road ownership with them. So for the long term, we really know how to do this. We have a comprehensive study how to implement which diversion routes, which signage, communications, and the impacts to people and goods movement, while also considering planned capital works. In the short term, which I'm still happy to update on in October, is a little bit more challenging. So we need to have signage that is both compliant with the Highway Traffic Act. We've got lots of options. It's not a standard sign, but also that shares the required information quickly so that it's not a ban yet. It's a recommendation at this point, but basically if you're in a truck, this is not the right route. So many ways to achieve that, variable message sign and others. And finally, a reminder that these programs really help, but they're not absolute. So the Cambridge truck ban that's now in its 11th month has seen a reduction from 1,000 to 600 trucks a day. So a 40% reduction, but that's still 600 trucks a day. So I will be back. We're targeting an October update about the options for the interim measures. But for residents, which I know is your concern, we're continuing to work on the full ban program and doing that in partnership with our area municipal partners.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Deutschmann. Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and thank you. Mr. Spooner, we need to make sure the detour signs are taken down. I saw a double hopper truck taking Elks Road the other day, the bend one by the 401 bridge, because they did not realize that Tressler's open. And also, if you could look at the cover-up that you have on the advanced screen for going north on Cedar Creek, that we could have that open back up so we can have that again. And I think right now, just a sign directing them that trucks use the Trustler Road roundabout, because I think what a beautiful job you did. It is absolutely really, really beautiful. And I want to thank you for that. And I think that will help a lot of the problems, just having that sign. I'm hoping it will.
Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you. Just to wrap up, in keeping with the air theme, I'm going to be proposing a motion in the future, hopefully seconded by Councillor Foxton, that we add to the capital plan a tunnel from Ayr to Kitchener. Thank you.
I'll second that.
It's lovely to end on a happy note. So I would now entertain a motion to enact bylaws first, second, and third readings. Moved by Councillor Hunick, seconded by Councillor Williams. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. Now I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Harris, Councillor Salonen, please use your e-scribe to vote. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening.